The front door closed like a soft slap. I stood there in the hallway, still holding the car keys I'd planned to give her. She didn't even ask for them this time, which was strange, considering it was raining. Pouring, actually. But she just walked out in those ridiculous velvet heels like the weather didn't apply to her. Like reality didn't. She left her umbrella on the hook, left her charger on the table, left a lipstick stain on the rim of the wine glass she never finished. That's how I knew something was wrong. She never left things behind. We hadn't spoken in 38 minutes. Not since the fight in the laundry room. That's where she told me she needed a night away from the fog. Whatever that meant. I didn't know I was fog. I thought I was furniture. So I told her, if she walked out that door, she could keep walking. It sounded brave when I said it. Now, it just echoed. The silence in the house felt surgical. Like someone had cut out all the background noise with a scalpel. I waited exactly 11 minutes before walking upstairs. Not because I wanted to, because I had to see if she took the red dress. She had. She also took her gold bracelet. The one from our anniversary in Asheville. The one she said she'd never wear again after what I said to her mother. I opened her drawer. The perfume was gone too. But what chilled me the most was what she left behind. In the sock drawer, behind a folded receipt from Target, was a note. Not a full letter. Not even a full sentence. Just 4 words, scratched in her handwriting, barely legible. You shouldn't have warned me. I sat down on the floor. The air felt thinner. I picked up the note with shaking hands and flipped it over, hoping, praying, for context. Blank. Completely blank. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. 1 photo. No message. I opened it. Her, sitting at a bar, with someone I hadn't seen in 10 years. And he was wearing my old watch. I didn't even remember giving him that watch. It was a cheap knockoff, a fake Omega I bought in Vegas during a conference. I wore it twice before shoving it in the back of my drawer because the clasp kept pinching my wrist. But there it was, on his arm, bold as ever in that photo. His hand rested lightly on her thigh like it had always belonged there. She wasn't pulling away. No, she was smiling. Leaning in, her shoulder pressed against his chest like she was trying to disappear into him. And what really kicked me in the ribs? She was wearing my hoodie. My oversized, gray college hoodie. The one she always said smelled like laundry and failure. But she brought that with her. I couldn't move for a solid minute. The photo just sat there on my screen, glowing. I stared at it like it might blink, like it might offer some explanation, some glitch, something I could argue with. But no. There it was. Reality. Packaged neatly into 1080p betrayal. The number wasn't saved in my contacts. No area code. Just a string of digits that felt anonymous and smug. I called it. Straight to voicemail. The voice was male. Confident. Arrogant. You've reached me. If you know who I am, you know what to do. I hung up before the beep. I walked back downstairs and stood in the kitchen, not knowing why. Maybe because that's where I always ended up when life fell apart. When my father died, I sat by the toaster for 2 hours. When I lost my job, I made 6 grilled cheese sandwiches in a row and didn't eat a single one. So I stood there, gripping the counter, replaying every moment from the last 2 months in my head like a madman with a tape recorder. Her new skincare routine. The perfume she said her coworker recommended. Her sudden obsession with going for drives to clear her head. God, I was so stupid. I checked the note again. You shouldn't have warned me. What did that even mean? Warned her about what? That I was fed up? That she couldn't just come and go like I was a doorman instead of a husband? Or was it something else? Was she planning this all along? That thought slid in like a knife. Because I realized something I had missed earlier. The note wasn't written in pen. It was in pencil, on the back of an envelope. The postmark was 3 days old. I checked the return address. No name. No sender. Just an address, one I recognized instantly. It was my childhood home. The house I hadn't seen in 17 years. The one that burned down when I was 12. My childhood home burned to the ground when I was 12. That night still lives under my skin like glass splinters I never managed to pull out. I remember the flames in the window before I heard the alarm. I remember the way my mom screamed for the dog, even though the dog had already gotten out. I remember the way my dad ran back in and never came out again. We moved across the state after that. I was never taken back to see the remains. They told me it was for the best. But now, 17 years later, there it was. That address, typed neatly on the corner of the envelope my wife had scribbled on, like it meant nothing. Like it was just junk mail. Only, this envelope wasn't mailed to her. It was addressed to me. but I'd never seen it before. And she sure as hell never asked me if I wanted to relive that nightmare. I stood in the kitchen gripping the note, heart hammering, and opened the trash can. It was full, which was strange because I always emptied it on Tuesdays, and this was Tuesday. The top of the pile was clean, just paper towels and a banana peel, but I dug deeper, not knowing what I was even looking for. And that's when I found it. A printed map. Not a Google Maps printout. No, this was from some weird site I didn't recognize. Grainy. Old-looking. It was a satellite view of that same burned-down lot. Except, it wasn't empty. There was something new built there. I dropped the map like it burned me and backed away. She knew. She knew I hadn't been there in nearly 2 decades. Why would she have that map? Why would she have that envelope? Why would she circle the damn foundation with red marker? Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I ran to the hallway closet and yanked the lockbox down from the top shelf. We kept our marriage certificate in there, plus my old photos, insurance policies, her passport. I dug through it like a raccoon in a dumpster. And just as I was about to give up, I found something I hadn't seen in years. A photo. From when I was 10. Me, standing on the porch of that old house with my parents. My dad holding up a garden hose, pretending to spray me. My mom laughing. And there, just behind us, in the shadows of the doorway, was a man I didn't recognize. He was in the background, out of focus, wearing a watch. I took a picture of the photo and zoomed in on my phone. It was that watch. The one I gave away. The one in that bar photo. The one on the wrist of the man my wife was sitting with just a few hours ago. I felt bile crawl up my throat. She didn't meet someone new. She went back to someone I'd forgotten. Or worse, someone I wasn't supposed to remember. And the worst part? There were no records of him in my life. No names. No mentions in old journals. No faces in family albums. It was like he never existed. Until tonight. I barely slept. I lay in bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun like it was ticking off every mistake I'd made since marrying her. I kept replaying the photo from the bar, the note in the drawer, the man in the childhood picture with the same damn watch, and that empty envelope with my name on it. And I kept asking myself the same stupid question. Was I losing it? At 6:12 a.m., I gave up on pretending to rest. I drove across town to the public records office. The place smelled like old carpet and toner ink. The kind of place where time moves sideways. I walked up to the desk and asked the clerk, a bored woman named Bonnie with pink glasses and an inhaler, for any documents related to 184 Sycamore Lane, my childhood home. She raised an eyebrow. That lot's been sealed since 2008. Sealed? I asked. What do you mean sealed? Code violation. Something about unstable ground. Foundation shifted after the fire, I think. It was condemned. No rebuilding permits granted. I hesitated. Are you sure? I saw a recent aerial view. There's a structure there now. Something new. She frowned and typed with one long red fingernail. Last permit request was denied. In 2017. No updates since then. Officially, that property's empty. I walked out with a copy of the denial letter and that awful buzzing in my ears. The kind that doesn't mean noise, but dread. So if it wasn't built legally, who built it? And why was my wife circling it in red ink? I drove straight there. The lot was 48 minutes from town, hidden down a cracked road covered in vines. I almost missed the turn. But when I pulled up to the address, heart pounding, fingers white-knuckled on the steering wheel, I realized the satellite photo wasn't lying. There was something there. Not a house. Not exactly. It looked like a cabin, maybe, but wrong. New wood, but weathered somehow. Like it had been aged on purpose. 2 windows. No curtains. A metal door that didn't match the frame. No mailbox. No path. Just weeds and pine needles, like the land itself didn't want to acknowledge its existence. I parked across the road and stared at it for a full 10 minutes. And then I saw something move inside. A shadow, quick, deliberate, passed across the left window. Too tall to be her. Too slow to be anyone normal. It paused just long enough for me to know it saw me. I ducked behind the dash like a child hiding from a monster under the bed. What the hell was I doing? I pulled out my phone to call her, to scream, to beg, I don't even know. But her number was suddenly grayed out in my contacts. It said, no longer available. I checked her social media. All accounts gone. Deactivated. Erased. Even our shared photo albums, wiped. It was like she'd never existed. Except, she had left her toothbrush. I drove home, panicked, shaking. I thought maybe I could still catch a trace of her, something she forgot to erase. A receipt, a sock, a scent. But when I unlocked the front door, the house was already different. Every photo of her on the walls, gone. The wedding picture, missing from its frame. The laundry basket she used, replaced with one I didn't recognize. The drawers, reorganized. My things rearranged. Like someone had come in and reset my life while I was gone. I stood in the middle of the hallway, gripping the wall, and whispered aloud, "What's happening to me?" And then something fell behind me. I turned slowly. On the floor near the front door was a package. Brown paper. No return address. No postage. It hadn't been there when I left. I opened it with a steak knife from the kitchen. Inside was a single item. A cassette tape. And written on the label, in handwriting I knew better than my own, "Play this only if you remember the fire." The last time I touched a cassette tape, I was 15 and grounded for breaking curfew. I'd sat in my room, rewinding old mixed tapes, pretending the static between songs could drown out my parents arguing downstairs. But this was different. This tape wasn't music. It was heavier, older. The label was yellowed, peeling at the corners, and the handwriting, hers, unmistakably hers, made my throat close up. "Play this only if you remember the fire." I didn't want to remember the fire. I've spent half my adult life trying to forget it. But now it felt like remembering was the only way out of whatever hole I had fallen into. Problem was, I didn't own a cassette player. I stood in the living room, tape in hand, like a man holding a grenade with no idea how to defuse it. I called the only person I could think of who might still have one. My Uncle Dean. He was my dad's younger brother, the family eccentric. Lived in a trailer out near the lake, surrounded by rusted cars and conspiracy books. He never married, never moved, still used a flip phone. If anyone had a working cassette player in 2025, it'd be him. When I called, he picked up on the third ring. "Curtis." His voice was gravel and whiskey. "You all right?" "No," I said too fast. I found something. A tape. I think it's from Mallory." There was a pause. Then, "You'd better come by." I drove there with the tape burning a hole in the passenger seat. The closer I got to Dean's trailer, the more my hands shook. I hadn't seen him in years. Last time was my wedding. He gave a toast about how love was mostly survival with nicer sheets. When I arrived, he was already outside, standing on the porch in a flannel shirt, holding a thermos and a cigarette like a man halfway between a nap and the end of the world. "You look like hell," he said. "She left," I told him. I figured. He led me inside, past dusty boxes and old VHS tapes stacked like bricks. He still had the same lazy boy from the 90s, duct tape holding the arm together. The cassette player sat on a shelf beneath a small TV. Black, sharp-edged, like a relic of some forgotten ritual. "You sure you want to hear it?" Dean asked. "No," I said, and inserted the tape. It clicked, hissed, and then silence. Then static. Then a voice. It wasn't hers. It was mine. But not me now. Me as a kid. 12 years old. Panicked. Crying. "No." He said not to open it. "Please, Mom. Dad, stop." The sound of something crashing. Then screaming. Not words. Just pure, primal fear. Then silence again. Then her voice. Calm. Soft. Controlled. "Mallory," she said, as if reading a name off a tombstone. "Curtis, if you're hearing this, you remembered the wrong part of the fire. They told you it started in the basement. It didn't." Another pause. "It started in the attic. And it wasn't an accident." I stopped the tape. I couldn't breathe. My knees gave out, and I sat hard on Dean's floor. He didn't ask questions. Just stood there, watching me, face pale. "You were never supposed to get that tape," he said. I looked up, shaking. "What do you mean?" He rubbed his face. "Curtis, she wasn't the first one to disappear." And then he walked over to a filing cabinet I hadn't noticed before, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a manila folder with my name written on it in red marker. Inside were newspaper clippings, articles, photos, 5 people, all from my past, all presumed dead. And in every photo, background, corner, mirror, stood the same man with the same fake Omega watch. Dean dropped the folder on the coffee table like it weighed 100 pounds. The clippings inside were old and brittle, curling at the edges like leaves. My eyes jumped from headline to headline without fully processing the words. Tragic barn fire claims 2. Local teen vanishes during storm. Accidental drowning at Sycamore Lake. Suspected gas leak explosion. 5 separate incidents, 5 different years, 5 different counties. But the photos told a different story. In each blurry black and white image, somewhere in the background, stood the same tall figure. Sometimes at a window, sometimes in a crowd, sometimes reflected in a car mirror. Always half hidden, always there, and always with that same damned watch glinting like a signature. And my wife had been sitting next to him last night, smiling like they'd been plotting this together for years. Dean poured whiskey into a chipped mug and pushed it toward me. "You've been walking in a circle since you were a kid," he said quietly. "This man isn't new. He's the reason for the fire. He's the reason your memories don't line up." I wanted to scream at him, call him a liar, but I couldn't find my voice. The tape was still spinning, hissing softly at the end of side A, like a snake ready to strike. I pulled it out with shaking hands and flipped it over. "You don't want to hear side B," Dean muttered, but he didn't try to stop me. I shoved it back in. This time there was no static. Just her voice, older, colder, speaking directly to me. "Curtis, by the time you hear this, I'll be gone. You told me not to come back, but you don't understand what that means. They don't leave once they're in. They only change faces." Her breath caught, a tremor in the recording. "I thought I could keep you out of it. I thought I could burn the evidence, bury the names, marry you, build a life so normal that nothing could touch it. But the fire never went out. It just moved." She hesitated, then whispered something that froze my blood. "You're not supposed to be alive." I tore the tape out before it finished. Dean's face had gone gray. "She's not just cheating," he said. "She's running. And you're a loose end." My head spun. Everything inside me rebelled. The humiliation of thinking it was just an affair, the pathetic texts, the begging. I'd been crying over a marriage while something much older and uglier was unfolding behind it. I staggered to my feet and stumbled outside into the thin sunlight. The trailer park was quiet except for the sound of wind chimes and a dog barking somewhere far off. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I expected another unknown number, another photo, another taunt. But it was a video file. No sender. Just a 30-second clip. It was the cabin on Sycamore Lane. Shot from inside. My wife stood in the center of the room, her hair wet, mascara streaked, hands bound with red tape. Behind her, barely visible in the dim light, was the tall man with the watch. He leaned close to the camera and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then the screen went black. Dean was at my shoulder. "He wants you there," he said. I turned to him, voice cracking. "Then that's where I'm going." The sky darkened unnaturally fast on the drive back to Sycamore Lane. What should have been golden hour vanished under thick clouds like someone yanked a curtain across the sun. The trees leaned in closer the farther I drove, their branches clawing at the windshield like they knew where I was going and wanted to stop me. Dean had begged me not to go alone. I didn't answer. I just took his keys and left. When I pulled up to the lot, the cabin was lit from within. A low orange glow pulsed behind the windows, like firelight. There were no sounds. No insects. No wind. Just that same bone-deep stillness I remembered from when the fire took everything, the air waiting to burn. I got out slowly, stepping over cracked pavement and dead pine needles. The metal door was cracked open 2 inches, just enough to show me someone was waiting. I pushed it. The hinges screamed. Inside, the room was warm. Too warm. A fire burned in a black stone fireplace that hadn't existed 2 days ago. My wife sat in the center, tied to a wooden chair. Her eyes locked onto mine the second I stepped inside. Not begging, not angry. Just wide and glassy, like she'd been staring at something for far too long. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. I rushed forward, but a hand gripped my arm before I got 2 steps. He was standing beside me, close enough to feel his breath. The man from every photo, every memory glitch, every nightmare I'd buried so deep I thought they were fiction. He hadn't aged a day. His face was almost blank, handsome in the way mannequins are handsome. Clean, symmetrical, wrong. "Curtis," he said, like he'd known me forever. "You remember more than you're supposed to." I yanked my arm away and stepped in front of her. "Let her go. She came here willingly," he said with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "She's not the one I want. She's my wife." "No," he said simply. "She's your witness." I didn't understand. My mouth went dry. My heart pounded like it was trying to get out of my chest. "She saw what you did," he continued. "That night. In the attic. You forgot, but she didn't. That's why she came back. To keep you from remembering. To keep you from bringing me back. I turned to Mallory, barely able to speak. What is he talking about? Tears filled her eyes. She finally found her voice, barely a whisper. You let him in. My knees almost buckled. What? The fire wasn't an accident. You opened something. You let him in. I staggered backward. Images hit me like punches, flashes of fire, attic beams collapsing, a box, a voice whispering from inside it, a game we were told not to play. Me and her. Kids. And something waking up when we opened the lid. I don't remember. I whispered. That was the deal, she said. He let you forget. He let you grow up. And I kept watch. I stayed close to make sure you never remembered. I married you so I could protect you. The man laughed softly behind me. And you ruined it, Curtis. You told her not to come back. You broke the seal. Now it's your turn to remember. Suddenly, the floor groaned beneath me like it was breathing. The walls pulsed with heat. The firelight turned red. I turned to run, but the door was gone. Just blank wood. Seamless. He stepped forward. The watch on his wrist glowed like an ember. You call me back. My head throbbed. My nose bled. Mallory screamed something I couldn't make out as he reached toward me, and the cabin vanished. Just like that. Gone. I was standing in the woods. Alone. No cabin. No fire. No her. Just a burned clearing where something used to be. And in my hand, somehow, impossibly, was the cassette tape. But now, the label had changed. New handwriting. One sentence. There's still one more thing you forgot. I stood in the ashes, stunned, the wind tugging gently at my sleeves like it wanted to pull me out of the clearing. There were no signs of the cabin anymore. No scorched beams, no smoke, not even disturbed soil. It was like it had never been built at all. But the cassette tape in my hand said otherwise. There's still one more thing you forgot. The words looked freshly written. I turned it over and found something else, something that hadn't been there before. A tiny number etched into the corner of the tape in what looked like a child's handwriting. B3. My breath caught. That wasn't part of the tape system. That was something else. Something personal. Back in middle school, before the fire, my bedroom had been labeled B3, short for basement room 3, a joke my dad made because I had begged him to let me sleep downstairs. I always told him it made me feel like I had my own secret lab. It was where I kept everything important. My sketchbooks, my model trains, and a locked red box my mother swore I should never open. I hadn't thought about it in years. I drove to my childhood town with the kind of focus you only get when nothing else in the world matters. The house wasn't there, of course. Just a cracked foundation fenced off with "No trespassing" signs and knee-high grass. But I climbed through anyway, ignoring the rusted wire and the warnings. The basement entrance had collapsed long ago, but part of the foundation still held. I walked along the edges, searching, hoping. And then, almost hidden under a slab of concrete, I saw it. A metal handle. Still intact. Still locked. I pried the box out with a crowbar and fell to my knees when I opened it. Inside were fragments of burned photographs, a melted walkie-talkie, and a single cassette player. Not one from now, one from back then. Covered in soot, cracked on the side, but still holding a second tape, untouched by time. I pressed play and heard my own voice again. Younger. Innocent. This is Curtis and Mallory, the tape said, cheerful and giggling. We're gonna trap the monster. Don't worry, Mom. He's not real. Then silence. Then her voice, younger too. If anything happens, play this for us. So we remember. I felt the tears come. But not from fear. From relief. Because I finally understood. The monster hadn't followed us. It hadn't cursed us. We'd created it. A story, a childhood ritual, a fear we gave power to. It fed on the belief we poured into it, and stayed alive in the gaps of our memories. But it wasn't real. It never was. Mallory had tried to protect me from the guilt, from the weight of it all. She'd lived with it, married me, loved me. Even when I forgot everything, she didn't. I drove back to Dean's, heart racing. When I opened the door, he was on the couch holding a photo. He handed it to me. It was recent. Mallory, alive, standing outside a diner in New Mexico, smiling, waiting. She mailed this here this morning, Dean said. Said she figured you'd remember eventually. I left within the hour. The drive was long. The air felt cleaner the farther I got from that cursed house, from the past. When I pulled into the lot outside the diner, she was already outside, arms crossed, a smirk I hadn't seen in years stretching across her face. Took you long enough, she said. I didn't answer. I just walked up to her, wrapped my arms around her, and whispered, I remember now. She hugged me like she never stopped waiting. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't afraid of the fire. I had survived it. We both had.